Hi, and welcome to episode number 3 of the Athlete You Are series. Today, we're here at Sarah's Cafe and Bar on the Danforth, and I'm here with Matthew Leitch. And Matthew is a father, an athlete, and Abel's IRONMAN trainer. And Matthew is definitely a person who's not afraid to take an adventure. In fact, he's completed 2 Ironmans, and he also trained a few athletes in his spare time. So welcome, and thank you, Matthew.
Thank you.
So right away, I'm impressed about your experience, your skill set, and just having to complete Ironmans and just like your whole experience. I've listened to Abel's Ironman story in episode number 2 and his day-to-day banter on the train, on the GO train when we were together, about you and about his training. And let me tell you, I'm already a fan, and I've just met you today.
Oh, that's nice to hear.
So today we're here to talk about a real discussion on the truth and fears that an everyday athlete would go through on the day-to-day, and also tips and tricks that Matthew can share with us today. So let's start a little bit about you and a little bit about yourself and just your training.
Sure. So I think I sort of came to endurance sports as a natural progression. So I was a competitive swimmer in high school. Didn't run too much. Just rode my bike around the neighborhood like every other kid did.
Yeah.
But then I had a few friends in high school that did triathlon, and it was pretty intriguing, although I never actually tried it at that point.
Yeah.
But then in the mid-2000s, I got into cycling, and I was running more, and so it just sort of seemed like a good fit to try a triathlon. So I did my first Olympic distance try in around 2005 or 2006.
Okay.
And then I kind of got a little bit of the bug. My wife did one as well. And then it was actually her idea to do the Ironman.
Wow.
And so we did our first one together in 2007. And
Cool.
then I did another one in 2010, and now I'm semi-retired. My 6-year-old.
But you also helped out some friends and colleagues.
Yeah, I did,
on their journey.
I've trained some friends, my wife, my sister-in-law. More of the training with my family is more with running.
Okay.
Just working with them
Okay.
on marathon plans.
Yeah.
But with Abel, I was, despite my insistence that he get a real coach, he wouldn't take no for an answer. So eventually I capitulated and helped him with his triathlon.
Cool. So for the viewers, and also just an everyday athlete, what are the things that someone should think about or just know in the back of their minds on just when they're thinking about trying a try or just a mud run or a fun run?
Yeah, I think the first thing is just to make the decision to go for it. And depending on the distance of the race, it may make it more or less daunting, but I think about my own trajectory. I remember running my first half marathon and thinking there's no way I could ever run a marathon.
Right,
and then I ran a marathon and thought the idea of an Ironman was insane. Mm-hmm. And eventually moved my way up to that event as well. Yeah. And so I think it's really just taking that leap at first, regardless of what the race is.
Yeah.
And then once you've made that decision, to just come up with a really solid plan to execute, get ready for it. So a plan not just for the training itself, but for your nutrition, how you're going to rest, just a full sort of across the board approach to how you're going to get to the race ready to go.
Okay.
So I think those are the keys.
Cool. And we all know that injuries are possible, right? So how would you prevent them?
Well, I think you have to listen to your body. So and this becomes a little tricky because sometimes you might just feel a little lazy, and that's a little different from actually being fatigued or being at risk of injury. So I think one of the things and as you become more experienced as an endurance athlete, you get a little bit better at this, but it's really listening to say, am I not going out for this run or because I'm just, feeling a little lazy about it, or do I actually feel like there's something wrong? Like I haven't gotten enough rest, or I've got a twinge that maybe doesn't feel quite right. So I think in those occasions you have to, really do a little soul searching and do your best to really listen to what your body's telling you. And if it's telling you that you shouldn't do, what you're going to do, or that you should dial it back a little bit, that's what you need. That's the voice you need to listen to.
But how do you know if you've gone too far?
Well, unfortunately,
apart from the actual injury.
Unfortunately, sometimes you won't know until you actually injure yourself. But I think you'll, I think if you push too hard, you'll start feeling really fatigued. So it'll be more than just the normal soreness of the exercise. Your body will actually start to feel tired, and I think that's usually a sign that you're right on the cusp, and you should maybe just step back a little bit.
And I guess with the digital age too, right? So
yeah, use your phone, your watch. Your watch will tell you whether you're actually overdoing it or not. But the unfortunate reality is you are at risk of injury no matter how well you prepare. Okay. We were talking earlier about the fact that when I was training for the second Ironman, I injured my calf, and it was not at a great time. I was sort of 6 or 7 months into my preparation. I only had 3 or 4 months to go, and I was forced to make a decision about trying to push through the injury or not. And it was a tough one for me. I decided to stop running, and I stopped running for about 6 weeks. Wow. And I was able to swim, obviously. I could still bike as long as I didn't push too hard with the one leg. And I would put one of those floating belts on, and I would run in the water in the deep end of the pool. I did that for 6 solid weeks. The entire time I was sort of frantic that my running fitness was dropping off a cliff. But it turned out to be the best decision I made in the training for the Ironman, because I came back at the end of the 6 weeks. I was able to manage it for the remainder. I got through my longest training runs without making the injury worse, and my leg felt pretty good. And then on race day, I actually ran the best marathon time I'd run. Well, I've only done 2, but I ran for me a great marathon that day. So I felt, as time went on, I felt not just super satisfied at completing the race, but I felt, good about the fact that I made the right decision in my training to sort of take a break.
And you didn't give up either, right? You continued.
Yeah, so I was, at the time I remember thinking, I'll stop running, and then I'm gonna just sort of see. Week by week, I'll make an assessment about, I knew there would come a point where I'd have to make a decision. Am I gonna go through with the race or not? Sure. But I sort of held off for as long as I could. I adjusted my plan, and in the end I was able to see it through. So it was sort of a good lesson for me in not just resilience, but being adaptable. So, I had hurt myself, and so now I couldn't continue with the plan I had. I had to devise a new plan, and I was able to work that out, which was always very satisfying.
That's good. That's pure motivation. That's fantastic. It's nice to hear. What about mental fatigue amongst everyday athlete? I hear that all the time.
Yeah,
tips?
I think so. It's pretty common is the first thing I would say, just in case people are concerned about that part of it. If you're already busy in your everyday life and you're trying to add the training for an event on top of that, it gets tiring, and it's tiring not just for your body but for your mind as well. And so for me, the few things I would do when I was going through it is, if I really felt like I was getting dragged down mentally, I might take a day off. So if I always think consistency is key when it comes to a training plan, but there are those occasions where you just have to be smart and say, you know what, I just can't do it today, and I need a little mental break. Yeah. And you just let that day go, and you don't try to get it back later. So you don't say, I'm going to take this run off, but I'm going to do it on the weekend. You just say,
and not feel bad about it?
Yeah, you just say, I'm going to let that one go. Okay. Give myself a little mental break, and then I'm going to come at my training again fresh tomorrow. And so for me personally, I found that pretty successful. And then inside the actual training itself, when you get into, especially if you're doing a longer distance event, and maybe you're out doing your long run, and you start to get tired, what I found was sort of a good way to approach it was to kind of pull yourself into the immediacy of what you were doing. So I would start thinking to myself, okay, is my cadence okay? My strides, and what I want for strides per minute. How's my heart rate? When's the last time I took on a little fuel? When's the last time I had a drink of water? What's my pace like? Am I on target with my pace? And then I would just go through all those things again. And the trick I was trying to pull off was just thinking about the here and now, and not looking at my watch and saying, I've got 10 more K to go and I'm so tired. And so it made it very immediate, and I was able to get through.
So were you looking for a trend as well, or was it just mental, trying to move
For me,
away
it was just, I found that regiment of coming up with a little diagnostic checklist and then just going through it over and over and over again. I know it sounds monotonous.
No, but it's a good tip.
But in the midst of training, I found on a lot of my longer rides and longer runs, that's what got me through. And on race day, I did the same thing. Especially at the Ironman distance, you need to break the race down into smaller pieces. Otherwise, it's for me, wouldn't have been manageable.
And I guess and celebrate those little victories, which are large victories.
Yeah, so I would,
in between.
you know, I had peanut butter and jelly sandwiches on my bike for the ride, and so I would be, you know, when can I take my next?
Where's my peanut? Where's my P&J?
Yeah, how much longer until that? And so I think those little things are what help get you through, and it's really, you're playing mind games with yourself to kind of overcome the fatigue.
Yeah. And I think that's true for not just an Ironman, but also a try, right? So for someone who's trying something new and even though it's a smaller pace, I'm like, you're still having to, it's that whole mental game just to get to that next set, right?
Yeah, and it's also important to be positive, you know. So it might sound silly, but I also know that maybe not out loud and maybe sometimes out loud, I would say just little positive things to myself. You know, you're doing well, you're feeling strong, you're standing up straight, you know, and just repeat those things over and over again until you make them a reality.
Right. Okay, I love that. So lastly, do you have any tips about giving your body a boost?
Yeah, well, so we talked a little bit about it, you know, with the mental fatigue, but you know, if in the training, and this, you know, this is where you have to be honest with yourself. So you have to decide, am I not going out on that ride because it's cold outside and I don't want to go out in the cold weather, or am I really tired and do I need a break? And so I think if you make the right decisions around that, that can give you a boost.
Yeah.
The other thing though is, and I think, you know, the consistency is key to getting you prepared, but I also think it's key to your confidence and in terms of a mental boost as you work your way through it and you get closer and closer to race day, you can look back on what you've accomplished as part of your training, and that can be a huge mental boost. In fact, I used to keep a training journal, especially for the longer distance races, and so I kept a journal for both of the Ironmans. And in the second one in particular, I did have a lot of doubt because of the injury. Yeah. But as I was getting closer, I would look back on the 10 months of preparation that I had done. Yeah. And you could look at where you started, look at where you peaked, you know, how much work you did at the, you know, in the longest week of your training schedule, and look at, you know, the tapering time. And it really helped me feel like I was ready for the race. And so that gave me a big mental boost. So it's another advantage of being consistent in your training, is that you can draw on that, and from a confidence perspective, when you actually go to do the race, you can say, I'm ready. I did all the work.
I've done this.
And that gives you a big boost. Yeah.
Right? So it's that mental talk too, right? Talking out loud. Oh, that's fantastic. Well, thank you, Matthew.
It was my pleasure.
Right. And thank you, Sarah's Cafe and Bar, for hosting us tonight. So for more videos, follow me at The Athlete You Are.